Hey, thanks for joining us today in our Living Well series. We're still in this crisis, and it's altered our world in some very significant ways. It's altered the way that we do church, the way that we do our jobs, even our families, actually our whole life. And we recognize that it's taking some toll on some of us. We recognize also that not everyone is okay. And in Northwest Christian Church, it's okay to not be okay. We just want to make sure that we're always honest with ourselves and with our God. And we're going to ask God to continue to help us in this life, and we recognize that He will do that. We also recognize that people are nervous, not just about the virus, but now it's also about our economic situation. It's about our future, both short and long term. Some of us are really afraid of being stuck. Well, at NCC, we're about connecting people to God because we believe that God still is the answer for our world. At NCC, we also believe in connecting to each other as well because we are a community. And we believe that God has given us resources, both physical and emotional, as well as spiritual, so that we can live the abundant life that Jesus came and promised. And so we want to connect people to God and to each other. And this means that we're going to provide some resources available to our community. So we're going to be having some of these Living Well chats. And I'm going to be bringing in some very gifted, some very knowledgeable experts in life experiences, especially in living in these times of crisis. So maybe it's about nutrition, maybe it's about recovery, maybe it's about grief. If you have a specific topic that you're struggling with, would you just let us know? Because we want to help. We want to help all of us to live well. We want to make this a useful time, encouragement to give you resources so again, that every one of us can live well. So today, I'm pleased to have Dr. Michelle Shelton. She's going to join us. She's an assistant professor at George Fox University. She teaches behavioral studies and psychology. She has her Doctor of Education from George Fox University in Higher Education Leadership, and she has her Master of Arts in Clinical Psychology. She has more than 10 years of experience working in mental health as a therapist, leader, and trainer, educator, and researcher. We've had her share in some of our living and community seminars before. Michelle, along with her very talented husband, Paul, and their 3 teenage boys, they live here in Newburgh, and they attend our Newburgh campus here at Northwest Christian Church. So Michelle, welcome, and thank you for being here. Appreciate you and your time.
Thank you, David.
So what we want to start off with is this whole idea about stress.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at this picture, and I'm already stressed out because I don't like heights. But I recognize there's a lot more stress going on. So can you tell us a little bit about what we know about stress right now?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here. And I love talking about mental well-being. So I'm excited to be here and share. So we're stressed, right? Folks are stressed more so than ever before. And they're stressed in different ways. And some folks are stressed that maybe weren't stressed before all this happened. So we know there's stress. We know it's important to be aware. It's important to be aware of our own stress and the stress of others, maybe in our family and in our community. So being aware is important, and acknowledging that we're under stress. I don't think it helps to have it bottled up. This isn't the time for that. So this is the time to be more proactive with that. If you look at calls to helplines right now, so the disaster relief helpline, which I believe we have the information on the church website, or will. Last year, comparing February to March of this year, they had a 380% increase in calls to the helpline. It's a national helpline for resources and support. And they also compared March of last year to March of this year, and they had an 891% jump in calls. And so part of me thinks, wow, you look at that and think there's some stressed folks out there, and there are for sure. But I think the positive side to that is they're reaching out for help. Sure. Through these helplines. So there's various helplines, crisis lines, and this is the time to be asking for help. On the website for the disaster relief helpline, they mention that it's for anyone. So it is for folks who are first responders. It is for folks in the medical field. It is for pastors. It is for teachers. It is for our parents. It's for our youth and elderly. It's for anybody who's under stress. Okay. And I think it's important to be aware and to reach out for help.
What are some things that you can maybe give us some practical advice on how we can cope with this stress? We recognize it's here, so what are some things that we can do that really would help that?
Absolutely. It's a great question. I think there's a couple things. I think there's stress in the moment, right? So what is going on and happening in the moment of a stressful event. And then there's some ways to either prevent or maybe to minimize stress. The goal isn't to completely eliminate stress.
Sure.
Some stress is good, right? I mean, we thrive with some stress. We're more creative. We might be motivated to, I don't know, tackle the home projects or something, organizing. I haven't found that motivation yet, but it's possible with some good stress. So everything in moderation is what we're looking at. But in a stressful event, when you know that feeling, right? And I have some of my students, sometimes I'll just ask them the question, what is stress? And it's not easy to define, but they know that feeling. They know that feeling of being stressed and getting ready to be stressed. So in that moment, to again acknowledge, not bury it. It's not the time to be prideful and bury it, but to acknowledge it. And it sounds simplistic, but taking a few deep breaths, thinking about it, thinking about your internal monologue and what you're telling yourself. I know for some people, maybe most people, and myself included, I start this downward spiral of all of the negative things that can happen, right? But it's better to try and reframe that. And you can call it positive self-talk, looking for positivity, but it's this idea of looking past the negative thoughts and focusing on positive. Even now, we can find positive outcomes. They're harder to find, but they are out there. So focusing on those positive things. My husband teaches at George Fox, as you know, and he teaches undergrad and master's level and doctoral level. And he does something with his students and he calls it one good thing. Just one good thing. And each week he starts with that in his classes. Just give me one good thing that happened this week. And of course, the first response is, oh, nothing good happened, right? And then pretty soon the students are looking forward to that after a few weeks. Hey, Dr. Shelton, I want to share my one good thing, right? So think about that one good thing. Practical ways for prevention and management of stress. First, I would say diet. Some of us, maybe we overeat, indulge in something when we're stressed.
Like I'm a stress eater. I recognize
Stress
that.
eater, right? So what's your go-to stress?
Well, I'd say Burgerville, right?
Burgerville, yeah. And Burgerville in moderation is good, right?
Yes.
I think anything in moderation. My chips, a bag of chips, maybe not, but a moderate amount, right? Some people don't eat. Some people, they don't have an appetite when they eat. Neither extreme is really good for us physically and mentally. So kind of this idea of moderation in a lot of things that what I'm going to talk about. Two, and this one's probably not going to be popular here in the Pacific Northwest, but maybe limiting our stimulants. So
You're talking coffee?
I'm talking maybe coffee. I'm not saying eliminate. I wouldn't say that to the good folks here in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. But so caffeine and stimulants, they increase our physiological responses to stress, right? So they keep us a little bit in more of the fight or flight mode.
Right.
So it might be where if you're feeling anxious, you're feeling a bit stressed, maybe that's not the time to have the third or fourth cup of coffee.
Right.
Maybe limiting to a couple. Also alcohol, again, in moderation, but during times of stress, we see an uptake in substance use, so keeping an eye on that. Third, getting enough sleep. And so, you might ask, how can I? How can I with everything going on right now? I would say to focus more on quantity rather than the quality of sleep. I'm sorry, quality rather than quantity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, I flipped it in my head for a minute. But the idea that, yes, on average we should have 8 or 9 hours of sleep, but maybe it's 6 or 7 hours of good sleep it might be better. And there are tools for the gadgety tech savvy folks in terms of monitoring your sleep and your diet and all of those. And so that might be something to try right now. I would say exercise. And with all of these, I would say another word to keep in mind is grace, right? Giving yourself some grace in this. If you didn't go out for that walk today, that's okay.
Don't beat myself up and cause more stress.
Yeah, and I'm not talking to you personally.
No.
Yes. Yeah, but that idea of you get stressed thinking I didn't complete all of these things,
Sure.
The diet, the sleep, and all these things, but just little changes. So yes, exercise. It's a beautiful time, at least now, right? Early spring. I'm seeing more folks out walking than I have seen in a really long time, and that's encouraging. Keeping social distance.
It's kind of like we are.
Like we are.
Distance, so.
We are
But
socially.
you can do that walking and exercises.
And you do that walking and exercising and those kinds of things. So keeping exercise, it actually reduces the stress hormones. So your body does release stress hormones, and it helps to combat that. And I would also say some kind of deep breathing, whatever works for you, relaxation exercise, to just, again, be focused and be aware of surroundings. So I would say that those are some considerations right now.
Can I go back to a little bit to the
Sure.
one good thing?
Yeah.
You were mentioning earlier in our conversation today about like in Brooklyn where there's all kinds of bad stuff going on in New York, but there were some good things even in the midst of crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it's you have to really be vigilant about looking for those positive stories out there, because you can get flooded and inundated with the negative stories. But as you mentioned, in Brooklyn, in this one hospital that's at the epicenter, they had 200 births in the last few weeks. So 200 new beautiful lives entering this world in the midst of chaos.
And speaking of babies, for parents out there, this is
Yeah.
stressful normally, but now we have our kids home. And what's some advice you might be able to give for parents on how to help with their kids' stress or with their stress with their kids?
Absolutely, absolutely. I know for many of us, those first few weeks seemed like a vacation. Kiddos home and everything, and then it became a bit of, it's still wonderful to have them home, but we're all now in each other's way in some regard, right? So what do you do with that? And so this is probably a couple good ideas for people with kiddos and teens, but also, honestly, it could be for any of us, but specifically for kiddos and teens, I would say first and foremost to be willing to talk to them. To be willing, and I'm talking specifically about COVID-19, should they ask? At their level, at what is appropriate for their level. So it's going to look different. The conversation will look different for a 5-year-old compared to a 15-year-old, right? But being willing to take that time to listen, because they're going to hear things, they're going to see things, and they're going to interpret it their own way if we don't, in some way, guide that for them. I would say, too, potentially limiting some of the media, the television and social media and those kinds of things. And again, it might be good for any of us to think about that. It's that fine balance of wanting to be aware of what's going on and wanting to feel that you're safe in having the knowledge that you need, right, to get through this, but yet not being overwhelmed by it.
Sure.
So for kiddos in particular, and in terms of social media, there's a lot of, again, negative information and potentially inaccurate information.
Right.
So kind of watching that with the kiddos. I would say an important piece with the kiddos during this time is checking for any changes, any dramatic changes. So excessive crying, excessive tantrums, maybe even bedwetting when they've already passed that stage, irritability that goes for several days, that keeps going. In those cases, I would say to check in with a healthcare provider because the stress might be taking more of an impact or toll than we realize.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, again, those are all good things. Is there anything else, maybe last kind of words so that you would give? We're going to put up this resource center and those hotline numbers as well. And of course, we at the church will want to be a resource and we'll have our website. But what are some other things, maybe just the last word you would have for any of us and our viewers?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say first and foremost to stay connected, right? So we're being asked to be socially isolated, but we don't have to be truly isolated from the world, right? So it can look different. Now, connections look different,
Sure.
For sure. Connections look different. I would say to try and rely on your support system. If you haven't been a part of a life group or a rooted group or some kind of a connect group, I would suggest doing it.
Mm-hmm.
The life group that my husband and I have belonged to for several years, again, the medium is different. We're on a group text, but that group text is still challenging one another, praying for one another, celebrating one another. It's just done differently.
I think we're doing Zoom calls too now.
People are doing Zoom. So what I say to folks is if my mom and dad can figure out how to be on Zoom, really just about anybody can be on Zoom. So it is true. And I have a very large extended family. And there were 20 of us on Zoom Saturday night connecting.
Wow.
And it's interesting because I don't know that we've connected like that before.
Oh, sure.
And so if you're looking for some positivity in this, we're maybe connecting in different ways, but maybe more so. than before. So I would say stay connected, be part of a support system. And if you're the one that's not under stress right now, maybe reaching out to somebody who you know might be, right? And supporting people through it. There's still ways to volunteer. There's still ways to donate. There's still the idea of buying local and giving back within our own community. And there's an upside to that, right? That's a good feeling to do that. I would say also to not only stay connected with others, but I would pay attention to our prayer life. I would say now more than ever, it's essential. It's essential to rely on God. It's essential to rely on His Word and to be in prayer and to be really intentional about that. Kind of a final piece, I would just say to not stop doing the things that you love to do, right? And for anyone out there, if it's music, if it's painting, if it's gardening, if it's a hobby, puzzles have become wildly popular for some folks. Whatever it might be, just don't stop. Just don't stop doing the things that you really love. Stay connected, stay grounded in Scripture, and stay positive.
Well, Michelle, thank you for your time. Thank you for your help and your advice. And you're our first one, so we're going to do this together. And we'd love to have you come back later on. I know you have some other expertise, and we've had you share another one that I'd really like to talk about later on. So hopefully you'll come back.
Absolutely. I would love to.
All right. Well, thank you, viewers. We're appreciating that you're here, and we're looking forward to living well. If you have any other questions, concerns, comments, again, reach out. We're here. We're available here at the church. We have pastors available. We'd love to do whatever we can to make sure that all of us are living well in the midst of what's going on.